What's up, you guys? Welcome to today's video. As you can tell by the title, I'm finally doing another story time. I know that is a long overdue. I've been promising you guys story times, I don't know, since 2019, but I just want to put this in here before we get into the video. I know I promised you guys story time would be on a different background. One of my lights went out and filming on the couch, it just looks too dark, so I'm just over here. I know most of you don't care, you just are here for the story, but I wanted to throw that in there. I did order new lighting, so I can film anywhere that I want to film. Okay, also, for the sake of this video, I'm not going to be saying the person's name because it is my family member and I want to respect that person's privacy. So we're just gonna call him family member or Bob or something, I don't know. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. It's a Heisenberg shirt. I know someone's gonna wonder. So this story time takes place a very long time ago. I was 16 years old, and now keep in mind, I was a very out of control, very disrespectful, arrogant kid, and I thought that the world revolved around me. That's a really hard lesson to learn as you grow up, that, oh yeah, the world does not revolve around Jessica, and there are rules that you have to follow. You can't just do whatever you want to do. So yeah, I was not only a very out of control kid, I also had kind of a double, even triple life. The person that I was in front of my parents versus the person that I was in front of my friends versus the person I was at school. I was a different person for all of those social interactions. And now I know a lot of people are gonna be like, well, didn't your friends go to school with you? No. I didn't hang out with anyone that I went to high school with. And the reason being was I hung out with older people. I was already really heavily into the drug scene. I was already selling. I was just kind of creating a network and building outside of my age group. I just completely didn't even associate with kids my own age ever. And there was many reasons for that, mostly because no one could get Jessica alcohol. So what's the point of being friends with them? That was how I saw friendship, on what do you have to offer to me? And that was just a really messed up way of thinking. But again, I was 16, I was young, I was arrogant, and I was just not a good friend. I was not a good person. But anyway, let's get back on track for the story. So I had an apartment at 16. Now, I know that everyone's gonna be like, how could you have an apartment at 16? I don't really remember exactly, but I did know the landlord. I knew the owner of this property pretty well, and we probably put it in someone's name that was 20, 21. That was the social circle that I hung out with. I probably put it in my friend's name, even though she knew that it was my place. So this apartment was my first apartment. It was really grimy, really crappy, gross apartment, but it was mine. And it was just really a place that I could go and have my own space. It was also a place that I used to sell a lot of weed. I mean, that was really what I was doing at 16. I was selling other things at 16, but when it came to bulk product, it was primarily weed at that time in bulk. So that was where I would have stuff. I would have weed, I would party, I would just have that place to hang out. I would also allow friends of mine to crash there. A lot of my friends and some family are kind of hippies and they're into the festival scene. That means in the summer, they're camping out at festivals, but in the winter it's really cold, and I would always let them crash at that place or places that I had in the future. So this apartment, we had only one other person in this building that we didn't know. Well, kind of knew him. He was an older gentleman. He really just liked things quiet. He was very nice. Sometimes he would bring us food. He was really just very kind. And then in the downstairs apartment, there was 2 apartments downstairs, and they were periodically taken by my friends, one of whom I would joke around and play around with and call him my bodyguard. We'll call him Frank. Frank was a 6th-degree black belt, very large guy. I would just joke around because he was 5 times my size that he was my bodyguard. He wasn't. I didn't have a bodyguard, but it was just a really funny joke. So what do we call him? Frank. Frank was in the downstairs apartment. It's just taking me a little bit to explain all of the components here, but there was an officer in this town, a really small town in upstate New York, that was just really nice. He would see me out and about at parties. He would see me just not really doing the right thing, not in the right crowd. He knew I had this apartment, but he also, I think he liked the fact that I had a safe space to go. Not that I couldn't go home. I could have gone home, but I didn't want to go home a lot, and I would disappear from my parents a lot, and that's where I would be, is in my secret apartment. So yeah, I was such a shitty teenager, but this officer was very kind to me. He would periodically pop in the apartment to check on me. And there was one time in particular that we had this glass table. This is important later in the story. I had this round glass table in the kitchen, and it's a really small apartment. You walk in, there's a kitchen, glass table, a bathroom, and a shower, a really small. Like there was only room for a stand-up shower and a sink and a toilet right off the side of the kitchen. And then you walk in a little bit, there's a living room and one bedroom. That was it. It was really small. This officer came out to the apartment on occasion to check on me, like I said. And there was one time in particular where I had a bong out and I also had brass knuckles out. And this officer said, "Jess, why don't we put that stuff away?" And I put it away and he said, "You're doing okay?" And I think that he was just afraid of a potential overdose or afraid that I wasn't safe. So he would just periodically check in on me. Now later, when I was a little bit older, he would also kind of just let me go and not call my parole officer when I was out past curfew or at parties drinking. He tried to give me a couple little moments of, "What are you doing with your life, Jessica?" He was a really nice guy, and I never forgot that kindness. So let's get back to the story. I got a call one night on my Razor phone. Do y'all remember those? On a Razor phone, and my parents, I don't even think they really knew I even had a cell phone. They really did not want me to have a cell phone. So this was also over 10 years ago. You know what I mean? So like 15 years ago. 14 years ago, it was a little bit taboo to have a teenager having a cell phone. My parents didn't want that. They also didn't want me on MySpace. And then eventually Facebook. They didn't want me on the internet basically ever, unless it was for school. They were really like kind of controlling with that. So I had to hide this phone, and I get a call one night from one of my family members. My family member was on house arrest. My family member had gotten into a fight with the person they were living with, and they couldn't stay there that night. So my family member calls me and they're like, "Jess, can I please stay at your apartment? Please. I know I'm on house arrest, but I can't stay here. I'm getting kicked out, blah, blah, blah." I said, "Of course." I didn't question him. I didn't ask him if he cleared it with his parole officer. Or probation officer. I didn't care because he needed my help. I never turned this family member down. If he did something awful, I would try to help him any way that I could. That loyalty runs deep in my bones, and I'm gonna help my family members any way that I can, especially when I was that young. I didn't even think it through. I didn't think this could be a problem. I didn't think that my family member would cause any kind of issue. I thought they had to stay at my place. Now, during this time, my family member had a really strong addiction to alcohol, and they were really going through alcoholism at this time. You would just walk in the house and there would just be a sea of Rolling Rock bottles, and I knew that he had a problem with alcohol, but I was also not gonna turn him away and tell him I wasn't gonna help him. So I said, "Of course you can stay at my place. There's a spare key above the door, so just grab the key. Make sure you tell Frank that you were there and that I said that you could be there." I could have very easily just called my friend in the building and told them, but I didn't want my parents to hear what was going on. So I just told this family member, "Make sure that you tell my friend, because if he thinks someone broke in, it's gonna be all bad. So just make sure that he knows that you're there and clear that with them." It wasn't until the next day that I got a call from the police department saying that I needed to get to this apartment and I need to evaluate the damage to my house, to my apartment. And I'm like, "Are you sure you have the right phone number? Are you sure you have the right person?" And they're like, "Oh, is your address blah, blah, blah?" And I said, "Yes." It took me a minute to understand what they were saying, but I arrived on scene, busted AF. My parents were also on scene. So one of the officers in a town next to my hometown, which is where this apartment was, one of the officers called my parents. Someone ratted me out. I still to this day don't know who, but that doesn't matter. So my parents were already there. Now usually if the cops were called for whatever reason, or if I was in trouble, my stepmom would show up. My dad wouldn't. And this was like noon on a Tuesday. My dad should have been at work. So seeing both of my parents outside of this apartment, I was immediately like, my heart is in my stomach. Like, I am so freaking busted. And I'm trying to think of like reasons and excuses that I have an apartment. I'm just desperately trying to like rattle my brain. I thought it was gonna show up on scene and it was just gonna be like me and some cops and they're gonna tell me about something that happened at the apartment. No, my parents are there. And I'm just like, ugh. My 16-year-old self is like, think of something that makes sense. Why is this your apartment? Think of something, think of something. Nothing. Couldn't think of a single thing. So I get out of the car and I walk over to the officers. I don't even look at my parents, you guys. And I'm like, yes. And they're like, we have this person, my family member, in custody and your entire apartment is very damaged. There is a lot of glass and blood and other bodily fluids. And we need to know if you want to press charges on this family member. And I'm like, press charges? Of course not. Let him go. Wherever you have this person in custody, you need to let him go. I'm not pressing charges. I don't understand what happened. And the officer said, whoa, 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 whoa. Okay, why don't you go look at the damage to your house first and then tell us if you want to press charges? And I said, there will be no pressing charges. The building is obviously still standing. And even if it was burnt deep down, I still wouldn't press charges. And I was just very like, you need to let this person go. The problem with that was they were on probation and house arrest. There was no letting that person go. So my parents are like, they're giving me the eye. You know the look from your parents. They are just like staring me down. I'm trying like really hard to just like not look at them and like pretend that they're not standing there. So we all walk up together to this apartment and I am just like mortified that my parents are following me up to my hidden apartment and my entire cover was blown. My entire like secret life was blown. And I opened the door, you guys, I was shocked. There was freaking blood everywhere. My glass round table completely shattered. There was blood all over the walls. It looked like there was puke on the kitchen floor. And then I turned the corner to go into the living room and we had a couch there. There's throw up on the couch, my bong shattered, tables shattered. There's a huge freaking hole in the wall where obviously someone like had been smashed into the wall. And I am like, fuck, what the hell? In the bedroom, shit's all knocked over. And then in the little side bathroom, there's blood on the mirror and blood in the sink. And it looks like it's like a crime scene. And I'm just like, is everyone okay? I'm shaking at this point because now I'm like so scared that my family member is seriously injured. And I'm like, what happened? Who else was here? What was going on? Like now I'm panicked. At first I was mad that the cops wanted to ask if I wanted to file charges against my family member, which I would never do. And now I'm like in a full panic. Like, is everyone okay? So that is the moment where Frank came up and they were like, hey, your family member was up last night with a bunch of people having a party. That person was really, really drunk. I tried to calm him down and he attacked me. Now, my family member is just like me, small and feisty, and apparently a lot of that blood was not my family member's, and my family member is a small person like me, and my bodyguard that I would tease around, I'd joke around and call him, was over 6 foot tall, over 200 pounds, and I'm like, he did all that to you? I'm really sorry. Now I'm like, I understand, like this was a raged out alcohol moment and my family member needs help. So I thanked the officers and I wanted to basically just say to my parents, oh, I have to go back to school now. I have to go to school. And my dad was like in kind of a state of shock because my dad all growing up was really in denial that I had a problem. He was in denial that I needed help. He didn't think that my addiction was that bad. He didn't think that I was in danger of going to prison or even getting in very serious trouble ever. So my dad wouldn't ever really yell at me, but I could just see how disappointed he was. And that hurts. That hurts when your dad is really disappointed in you. So I was just, you know, I was upset that I got caught, but I was upset that I let him down. So I don't really remember the explanation that I gave my parents, but it was just really apparent at that point in time that my life was a complete mystery to them. So my family member was then in jail, and the bodyguard didn't press charges on this person, but because the cops were called and my family member was on house arrest and probation, they were being violated. Now, I made sure to call his probation officer and kind of explain the situation to them, and I said, listen, my family member needs rehab. Please do not just put him in jail. Please, can we work to get him into treatment? And that's what we did. We worked to get my family member into treatment. My family member has since struggled throughout the years with sobriety, but I'm very close with them and I love them dearly and I would do anything to help them. Addiction is crazy, and alcohol can make you just flip so fast and just completely not act like yourself. And my family member is not a violent person. They wouldn't just attack that person. So I never really understood what went on between the two of them. I guess, you know, Frank was a little bit pushy about getting my family member out of the house because they were partying or what have you. But yeah, so crazy stuff happened in my life, and I just ended up cleaning up the blood the best that I could. I replaced the kitchen table, I replaced the couch, and I was no longer allowed to leave the house for a very long time. So my friend ended up taking over and staying at this apartment, and I honestly didn't go back to that apartment for a very long time. I'm gonna end today's video here. I really hope you guys enjoyed this story time. If you're struggling in addiction, please reach out for help. If I got sober, there's no reason why you can't. I love you guys. Stay safe, stay sober. Please do not break the law, and I will see you guys on my next one.